As we continue through Pregnancy Loss Awareness Month, ceremonies have been held in states across the country, such as Kentucky, Wisconsin, Ohio, and Louisiana, to honor children lost through miscarriage and infant death, and to pay respects to their families. Meanwhile, on Capitol Hill, legislation has been introduced in Congress known as the Caring for Grieving Families Act. The bill, if signed into law, would aim to alleviate some of the financial difficulties that come after losing a young child by requiring insurance companies to be transparent and minimize required expenses for families who experience miscarriage. The bipartisan legislation was introduced by Abigail Spanberger of Virginia, a pro-abortion member of Congress who supports codifying Roe v. Wade into law, and Marionette Miller Meeks of Iowa, who also recently introduced a bill that would expand access to contraception. Joining me now is Dr. Abby Jorgensen. She's an assistant professor of sociology and healthcare ethics at St. Louis University. She's also a bereavement doula. Dr. Jorgensen, thank you for being here today. Talk to us about your work as a bereavement doula. You help families welcome life into the world, but you also help them say goodbye to their young children.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. As a bereavement doula, I get to do what we think of a lot of doulas as doing, walking with families through pregnancy, through birth, and through postpartum. But as a bereavement doula, I do that when the baby has passed away or is likely to pass away shortly after birth. So through in situations of miscarriage, stillbirth, and infant loss. I get to provide families with physical, emotional, informational, and advocacy support through some of the hardest moments of their lives. And it's an honor that I get to do that.
That's beautiful. And as we spoke about before, there's legislation on the Hill that's aimed at helping families go through this. It was introduced by members of Congress who are not necessarily pro-life, but they understand that this is a need. One thing that some don't really think about is the medical bills and the logistics that parents might face in the midst of grieving the loss of their baby. Can you speak to how insurance companies and medical facilities treat parents that are in this situation?
Absolutely. I think they often have the protocol in place that applies to many other different situations. And that means that it's not necessarily grief informed. And that's something that I really work to use in my practice, that many healthcare providers are working to use in their practices: grief-informed language, grief-informed practice. And what we see is bills coming to families who have had a miscarriage or a stillbirth or even an infant loss that they didn't expect. Some families don't know they're going to get charged for that ER visit or for that ultrasound where they found out that their baby's heartbeat just wasn't there anymore. So it's hard enough to open up that bill and have that surprise. But then also, more and more providers are pushing for grief-informed language on those bills. For example, spontaneous abortion is the technical term that is used in a case of miscarriage. So when someone gets a bill, it's not only a bill for the day they found out their baby died, it's a bill that says spontaneous abortion. And that type of language is really hard for lost parents to hear. So there's more and more push from providers, from doulas, from lost families, for insurance companies to reconsider that the protocols they had in place may not work in situations of miscarriage, stillbirth, and infant loss. And I'm really excited to see that there's that common understanding, even among people who may disagree vehemently on other topics, that the current system is just not working for lost families.
Yeah, that's really encouraging to hear that work is being done about that. Dr. Jorgensen, I'm curious, how are fathers affected by miscarriage? What resources are available in particular for them?
Absolutely. So fathers are mourning the loss of a child. It's often very different when they're not the person who's also giving birth to the child.
Sure.
So they're caught in a strange space of being very intimately a part of the experience and also not having the same experience as mothers. And for that reason, we see, even though there are so few resources for anyone, we do see more resources for lost moms. There are a couple of great resources for lost dads, though. The book Grief of Dads just came out from Ave Maria Press, and that tells many dads' stories. And I think it really helps dads feel less alone, know that the questions that they might have, even about their faith or their manliness, the fact that they cried at the loss of their baby, right? These stories really show what a common experience grief is and how dads can come together over that. Or other places like Bereaved Parents Community Group, which I run, are open for dads to talk about their experience and to share that with others in real time and get that assurance that they are, in fact, not alone.
That's encouraging. Dr. Jorgensen, I'm curious about your take on how the Catholic Church helps families grieve the loss of little ones, and what we could potentially be doing better as a church to support families through pregnancy loss.
Absolutely. This is something that I honestly found very disheartening when I started this work many years ago, realizing that it wasn't always clear whether there were resources for someone in the Catholic Church or in their local parish or diocese, realizing that even when it was clear, sometimes the information was outdated or people were trying to provide something but didn't really know what to provide. And I'm really grateful to see over the years more and more folks dedicated to the effort of making sure we have support for lost families in the Catholic Church. Right now, I'm working with a team of graduate and undergraduate research assistants to pull together all the different resources available to families in the US. Because if a family is looking for what's my Catholic Church offer, what does my Catholic diocese offer, sometimes that information is on a different page than they expect. Some dioceses have that on an NFP page, others have that on a funerals page, right? And when you're in grief, the last thing you want is to have to search through the church to find out what the church can offer you. So that idea of doulas or research projects, bringing that information to lost families, that's a really important part of how I've approached loss support in the Catholic Church. We have so many great pastoral leaders, and I think a lot of times those people want to help, but they just don't know how. So getting more information into their hands is the second way that I'm really working to make sure that the amazing resources we have are clear to families.
That's wonderful. Well, we're so grateful for the work that you're doing to ensure that these parents, these families are not alone. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Abby Jorgensen of St. Louis University. God bless you in your work.
Thank you so much.